Hey everyone, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is a Fox First Scent of Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen on the PC. It just released in January 2016. I'll have a full review, scripted and all, ready for you guys in hopefully a week or two, maybe more. You know how it goes with me. I always get busy with real life stuff, like work, you know? I asked work if they would keep paying me if I don't come in, and they said no, so gotta keep going into work. Can't play games all day. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is not a brand new game, obviously. It's brand new to the PC platform. However, it came out on consoles back in 2012, and I believe the Dark Arisen update to the game, or like expansion, whatever you want to call it, I think that one came out the following year, 2013, correct me if I'm wrong. These Fox First Scents are not scripted, they're just off the cuff, so I just like to talk about the game. It is my first impressions. Basically, it is a competent port. While there are a few minor issues with it, I haven't experienced any significant bugs or glitches. If you go into the options, you'll notice that you can use keyboard and mouse. You can rebind the keys for that. You can change, the speed of the camera and all that good stuff. Invert the controls and all that. I don't know why you'd want to. That's crazy stuff. Even though it says keyboard and mouse, I'm actually using the Xbox One controller. You can use the Xbox 360 as well. And you can also use PlayStation controllers if you hook them up, is what I'm told. That's what the developer said. So I guess if you have a DualShock 3 or 4 and you know how to hook that up, you can go ahead and do that. And it's supposed to work with basically any of your standard controllers. Got your audio options separate for voice, music, and other sounds, which is really nice. And of course, the pawn chatter option new to the PC version. Get rid of all that useless, stupid stuff that the pawns say. Oh, look, I found something, Arisen. It's a rock. And the video options. That's what you guys are interested in, right? Screen resolution should ideally go up to whatever your monitor is. They tested it up to 1440p. You can set a whole bunch of different settings here. It doesn't have everything you would want, but it has all of the basics covered pretty much. The only thing it's lacking is a borderless windowed mode. However, if you set it to windowed mode, there are some little utility apps out there that you can use to try to force it to fit the screen. That's actually what I'm doing right now. The refresh rate you can set to, whatever your monitor refresh rate is. I think it pretty much covers all the bases in terms of monitor refresh rates. And then the VSync option is there. It actually works, which is nice. Some PC ports of consoles come out with VSync options and they just don't work. Like the original Darksiders on PC had a VSync option, but it didn't work. Which I don't know why they put that in there if it doesn't work, but they did. As for VSync, set it on or off, whatever works for you. Frame rate is, it only goes 30, 60, and variable. I would have liked to have had it gone 30, 60, 120, and 144, but whatever. There are plenty of options here for you to play with. Unfortunately, most of them require that you go back to the title screen. I've disabled the anti-aliasing because I am running SweetFX, so I'm using SweetFX to force SMAA, which is better than the game's included FXAA, which makes the game look a little blurry, and I don't like that. Shadow quality, texture details, texture filtering, HDR grass quality, it's got all that good stuff. However, as you'll notice and as we'll talk about, the texture quality in this game is not up to snuff for 2016. In fact, had this game come out on PC in 2012, it probably would have looked a little dated with the textures. The textures have never been that great. But oddly enough, there's a field of view slider for a third-person action RPG. That's awesome. I'm not sure why you need it. I really feel like field of view is mainly for first-person games, but whatever. I did turn up the brightness a little higher than I would normally turn it up, just because whenever you record footage to upload to YouTube, something about YouTube's compression likes to darken it, so I always like to brighten up the footage. It was especially true of games like Dark Souls and whatnot. If you see any screen tearing, I don't know what that's about. I wasn't getting that before. Maybe it has something to do with the recording. I'll turn on VSync in a little bit to show you what it looks like with VSync running. When I look at the footage after recording it, it does look a little stuttery. However, if you do see that in the final version that's rendered and uploaded to YouTube, that does not happen when I'm playing it in the game itself. It doesn't appear to be stuttery at all. Although some of the shadows flicker a bit like you just saw there. I do, of course, have the SweetFX mod installed, so some of the transparency effects with the smoke and all that stuff will look a little odd. That is not the original game itself. That is my mod. Like if you look at my character's hair, the edges of the hair look like they're almost like layered over the smoke and particle effects. That is, that's the extra mod that I have installed. That does not happen as far as I know with the base game. So don't judge the base game on that. What's interesting about Dragon's Dogma, it is a Western style role-playing game made by a Japanese developer, which is pretty rare. When we say Western style, we're not talking about cowboys in the West and the U.S. What we're talking about is the Western style in terms of outside of Asia. You know, you've got the RPGs that were made in Japan, which are your JRPGs, things like your Final Fantasies and your Dragon Quests and all that. And then you've got the games that were released in, you know, places like the US and Europe and whatnot, where they focus more on creating your own character, crafting your own story, you know, that sort of experience, whereas JRPGs focused more on having a more linear story with set characters and more background details for them. As I walk out here, you'll notice that like the lighting instantly changes. Some of the, I don't know if this is a word, gradations or grading from one kind of shadow to the next doesn't look that great, but that's just an issue with the fact that the game's quite a bit older, and I don't think they ever intended to bring it to the PC. I think that's obvious since they waited, what was it, 4 years to release it, approximately 4 years. The lantern is practically a necessity in some areas. Some areas of the game are so dark that without some sort of light source, you practically can't see what you're doing. You can just barely tell what's going on. We'll take out some skeletons here. As you can see, this is third-person action RPG combat. There is no lock-on. So this is not like Dark Souls or Demon Souls. You don't have a lock-on here. Sometimes I feel like the game would be better with a lock-on, and sometimes I'm not so sure. There are certain abilities like that right there that you saw where I just ran forward and sort of slid into them with my weapon. I think that's called the Blitz Strike. That's not as hard to aim as you'd think, but occasionally you'll miss your targets because they move or you push slightly to one side or the other. Those little barrels there that have red on them, they're exploding barrels that you can pick up and toss at enemies. You can also pick up other characters in the game, so if you want to just run around picking up people in town and throwing them off cliffs, you can actually do that. I don't know why that's a feature, but it is. You can also climb up on enemies, as you'll see in a moment here when we fight like this giant Cyclops critter. Some enemies are more weak to melee or to magic. When you start the game out, you can create your own character, name your character, design your character, choose a voice, all that good stuff. What's interesting is if you create a like big, heavy set character, they will supposedly have a better time not being staggered when enemies attack, but I believe they regenerate stamina more slowly, whereas like my character, I have a female character that's much slimmer and smaller. She is supposedly staggered more easily, but regains stamina faster, is what I'm told. Now, I haven't put that to the test myself, but I trust the people that tell me this stuff when I live streamed it. If you haven't checked out my live streams, you can see a link to my live stream Twitch channel down below in the video description. So what are my first impressions of Dragon's Dogma on the PC? Well, pretty good. I played it on the consoles, and I can tell you right now, the Xbox 360 and the PS3 versions of this game played like absolute garbage. The frame rate was terrible with lots of dips. The Xbox 360 version played a little better in terms of the frame rate, but had horrible screen tearing. The PS3 played at a slightly lower frame rate, but did not have any screen tearing. And both versions of the game are sub-HD native resolution, and have black bars at the top and the bottom, and look really, really blurry. All right, when we go in here and take a look, you can see that my vocation is a fighter. You can start as a fighter, strider, or I think it's mage, magic user of some sort. You can set your skills and abilities, augments. You know, there are these things that sort of passive abilities, augments that apply at all times, as long as you have them equipped. And then these are your actual abilities that you can use in combat, your skills. As you level up and gain more, what are they called, discipline points, you can buy new skills, and then you choose which ones you set up on your character. So eventually, if you buy enough of them, you'll have to choose among the ones that you have which you want to use, and then you won't have access to the ones you didn't choose because you only have 3 options per weapon. In this case, the shield kind of counts as a weapon because you can actually hit enemies with the shield and break their guard. You can use the shield to taunt enemies to get their attention if you want to sort of tank. And then, of course, the Strider is more like a ranger or bow user. So the Strider has these like dual-wielding blades that are daggers, and also for a secondary weapon has a bow. And I used the Strider for a bit. I kind of liked it, but I just constantly forget to use the bow. As you can see, we're exploding some of these barrels here, and magic spells that come down and explode and blow up. And the effects are really awesome. Sometimes I feel like there's a bit too much going on the screen, but that's to be expected when you got 4 people in your party. There's the main character, which is you, the character you create. Then you have a primary pawn. that you create and name yourself, and that pawn stays with you through the whole game. And then you can choose 2 more pawns. Either you can choose pawns that are just out there, or you can choose pawns specifically from your friends. These are the pawns that your friends create, and then your pawn will be available for your friends and other people to choose. I'm turning on the VSync option just to show you what it looks like with VSync turned on, because I did see a little bit of screen tearing when my frame rate tanked there a moment ago when there was a lot going on. The pawns are essentially these like human-like creatures. They look entirely human but lack a soul or something like that. So basically the game is telling you that you can use them like they're just kind of conscripts. You pay, or you use this sort of currency to enlist them in your party, and then you use them for however long you want, and you can trade them out for other ones. Except for, of course, the pawn you create, your unique pawn, that one stays with you. My unique pawn is called Fawn because it rhymes with pawn. I'll show you here how you can actually climb up on the Cyclops in just a moment. One thing about Dragon's Dogma, on normal difficulty, there's normal and easy are the 2 options you have when you first start the game. On normal difficulty, you're probably going to die a lot. If you fall too far, you'll instantly die. Many enemies, as you saw right there, I climbed up, but he knocked me down really quickly. Many enemies can kill you in just a couple shots. Like, you can go from full health to dead in no time flat, especially when you start getting staggered. Like, you notice Flynn right there, the other pawn that's in the maiden's dress, she's a strider, so she's got those really fast moving daggers. You'll notice our weapons are lit up with different like effects. That's because the mages can cast special abilities like put flame on your weapon, or ice, or thunder, lightning, which is really cool. There's a lot going on in this game. Don't be afraid to look stuff up or look at tutorials and whatnot, because when I first started playing it, gosh, I was confused. I didn't know how everything worked and what was what and where to go. And most of the quests give you waypoints, but I think it's in certain cases you sort of have to figure out on your own what to do. It's not always really super clear. It's not Skyrim. You know, it doesn't say, go here, do this, go here, do this. Sometimes you're kind of left out there to just figure it out. It's usually not too difficult, and I don't find myself getting lost all that often. But the main city, I think it's called Grand Soren, in the world of Grancis here in Dragon's Dogma. Main city's pretty big. It's got a lot going on there too as well. But when you're in the main city, if you climb up atop the walls and kind of look out over the landscape, your frame rate's going to tank more than if you're just wandering around in a narrow corridor here. You'll notice that my frame rate's staying in pretty much like 120 to 144. My max is 144, and that actually is the maximum for the game according to the developer. The max is 144. That's nice that a Japanese developer ported a game to the PC and included 144 frames per second as an option. Ideally, they should allow you to run at whatever frame rate you're capable of. I mean, if it were possible, you should be able to run it at 2,000 frames per second, but of course, that would be completely useless. There is no monitor that could show that many frames per second. You should have no problem maintaining constant 60 FPS if you've got a even decent, mediocre gaming PC. This is not an intensive game when it comes to performance, and that makes sense given that the textures are pretty low quality and there aren't a lot of really taxing video graphics options here. However, if you are having any issues with performance, my recommendation is to knock the anti-aliasing down, and if necessary, turn it off completely. You will notice a little bit of a little bit of the jaggies and jagged edges on things like your sword and whatnot, but it'll get you the performance back that you need. And usually for me, I prefer a higher frame rate than I do better graphics. Even though I'm a PC gamer at heart, I love the frame rate. The performance makes a big difference. The game doesn't always give you an option to like quickly dodge. It's not, you know, like I said, it's not Dark Souls. You're not going to be rolling and backstepping and whatnot. So sometimes I feel like I'm getting hit when I don't necessarily need to get hit. I can see attacks coming, but I can't move out of the way fast enough. Managing your stamina is a big deal in this game. Sprinting anywhere outside of town exhausts stamina, and if you sprint all the way to the end of your stamina, you'll get exhausted. If you overuse your stamina during combat, you'll get exhausted and have to recover. So there's a lot of strategy involved. And that, my friends, is Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen for the PC, my Fox First Scent. I hope you look forward to the review, and I will see you next time.